The premise of stop killing games is obviously absolutely correct. Where I think they go wrong, however, is in the solution. Especially in an ethical sense, they're completely right, because people go and buy these games expecting and thinking these will last for life, as they have done with like the PS1, the PS2, and the consoles before that. But now we're in a generation with this internet and stuff. A lot of these games require us to like connect to the internet. And once these big game companies decide to pull the plug, they literally, in effect, shut you down from playing the game that you thought that you had the CD to. So in an ethical sense, stop killing games is correct. The consumer has to have the right to know how long this game will last them. And if it doesn't last them for a lifetime, it should say rent on there. But their solution to solving the problem isn't right, in my opinion. I am, at the end of the day, a free market capitalist. And I believe in terms of the free market, especially for things that aren't necessarily life or death, like food, where you live, clothing, stuff like that, let the market play its course. I don't believe in government having control over how businesses should run, okay? At the end of the day, I believe in natural solutions. And natural solutions is, well, I won't tell you the solution right now, because obviously I'm leaving that to the end. So watch to the end of this video so you can hear what I think the solution is. But I believe in a natural solution. Governments were never there to patrol how businesses were supposed to run, okay? Governments are there to protect the people in a physical sense with stuff that are essentials like police force, okay? Schools. Not to patrol free market capitalism, which our country, I live in the UK, was founded upon. Same thing for you guys in the US. I don't believe you should be able to force companies to act in a certain way. Yes, I do believe in terms of them advertising their games as buying them and not renting them, that's not forcing them to act in a certain way. That's actually telling them to tell the consumer what is actually being sold, because right now we're being missold. Where Stop Killing Games want to go with it, though, in the long run, is for all games to have this mandatory thing where they have to have an end of life solution, where all game companies must be forced to offer a way for games to last forever. I don't think this is correct and fair and just. This isn't free market capitalism. This isn't ethical. This isn't moral. Because remember, this is games, okay? This isn't something that we need. This isn't something like food or water or shelter or clothing. This is a thing that we just like to have. It's a want, not a need. So I don't believe in forcing game companies how to run and operate their games. At the end of the day, if a games company want their game to only last 5 years, let's say, they should be able to do that. However, if they want to let their game to only last for 5 years, this must be clearly displayed at purchase. I personally think that this must be displayed on the actual box or on the cover art of the game when you see it on an online Play Store, on Amazon, on Google, whatever it might be, PlayStation Play Store, Xbox Store, whatever it might be. It needs to be clear, front, left, right, and center for the consumer to see. However, I do not believe that all game companies must allow their games to live on for life. I think at the end of the day, it's the right of the games publisher for them to decide how long their games last. It's their game. They can do what they want with it. There's this prominent YouTuber called Some Ordinary Gamers, who is one of the bigger YouTubers, and there's quite a few of them now, like Penguin, Zeno, I think, is on it as well, a few others, who are talking about stop killing games. And he has a video about it. It's 25 minutes long, and I want to go through that video with you guys and just explain to you where I think both the Stop Killing Games initiative is going wrong, as well as the thought process of some of what Mudahar is saying. Like I said, the premise they have correct. The solution is wrong. It's just kind of like Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate has the correct premise. The correct problem is there. He's saying it very clearly. But I just believe that the solution is wrong.
Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games that they've sold to customers. This is a game called Need for Speed 2015. Now you might be like, whoa, this seems fun. I'm driving cars and everything. This is a game that you're forced to connect online with, okay? It was a problem when it came out, and it still actually is a problem now. Now, the game's actually good. But see, the problem is, because it requires a connection to the internet, when that, server goes offline, this game is effectively killed. It's dead. Now, you might remember, obviously, with Stop Killing Games, when we first talked about it, Ubisoft had a game called The Crew, which went offline. They took away people's actual video game purchase, and it just kind of went up and poof into the air. This is what's going to happen with Need for Speed if things don't get addressed. Now, again, to give you an idea, imagine if you go to a store, right, and you have a copy of Need for Speed. You go up, you go to the cashier, you're like, hey, man, can I have Need for Speed? And they're like, well, sure thing. It'll be $59.99. And you're like, okay. And you go home, you install your game, and it's like all good. You don't know any better. But imagine if the cashier, did this instead. Hey, man, can I buy Need for Speed? Sure, it'll be $59.99. Of course, let me give you the money. Hold on there, pal. Do you know that if this game's online servers go out, you'll lose access to it? And you're the consumer, you're like, whoa, wait, that doesn't seem logical. Wait, you're telling me that this game that I'm buying right now, I mean, you could even flip it with something like Rainbow Six Siege. You're telling me this game that I bought, I won't really own it? Well, of course you won't. You mean I don't own this game like a lot of other games that I own that I buy physically or I just buy access to? No, you're actually renting the game. I feel like if instead of the words purchase at a store, we had the words rental, that would probably change a lot of minds going forward, right? Now, obviously...
This is one of the points where I think he's going wrong. I genuinely don't believe that having a game that only lasts 5 years, let's say, is going to drastic, and that's being said on the box from the get-go. So it says rent. Let's say it says rent Needs for Speed for 5 years for the exact same price. I truly don't believe that it will significantly decrease game sales. I think it would decrease game sales by maybe a 0.5 percentage point. Now, the reason I say that is because we've got to realize that most gamers aren't hardcore gamers who actually care if a game is going to last a significant period of time, okay? Most gamers aren't that kind of gamer where they have like all these game boxes from like the N64 and PS2 and PS1, and they're like, they really care if it's going to last, okay? Most gamers play a game for a couple of years, they finish it, and that's it, done. For example, GTA 6, if they said, okay, that the game will only work for 5 years and it's the same price, would it really stop you from buying it? Like, be honest. Because for me, I really don't care. And even if they said it will last 5 years and you have to buy it again for the same price for it to last another 5 years, I would still buy it because they have that much leverage, because the game is that good. And that's where I want to go into the kind of point about leverage. We've got to realize that these game companies have leverage against us. And the reason that I know that this is the case is because a lot of us complain about a lot of the negatives about gaming. For example, the Stop Killing Games thing. And we've got to realize this problem has been going on for probably a decade, probably since like the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation. This has been going on, but yet we're still buying billions and billions of pounds worth of games. Why? Because the games are that good, we don't mind suffering the cost. They keep saying in Stop Killing Games that if the consumer was told that it would only be a rental, that, so many people would stop buying the game. I truly do not believe this. Most customers really don't care. For example, like the FIFA customers, for example, that game comes up every single year. And most FIFA customers by now know that the servers only last for like a couple of years. But they really don't care. They will still keep buying that game full price. Why? Because a new game keeps coming out each year anyway. And they just upgrade. They're happy to pay for all the bad stuff. Yes, if they were given the choice of a game lasting forever, they would take it. But all I'm saying is the leverage that these game companies have over us outweighs all of the cons. And I know this because the game industry is only growing. I also have seen a number of YouTubers kind of theorize that if the consumer was told it would be a rental, that the game companies would be forced to kind of lower their prices. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. Because the game companies know they have that leveraged against us. They know that their games are so good, we will be keeping on going for more and more and more. I'll give you an example. This is a MacBook that I have right here. You can't really see it on the screen, but these things are bloody expensive, okay? And I wish that I could upgrade the RAM and the hard drive space. I think that this is a kind of failing on Apple's part. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to keep buying the Apple Mac time and time again because they have that leverage. And they have that leverage not because of some sort of arbitrary reason where it's like they're just using the power for power's sake and they just have power out of nowhere. No, they have the power because they have made something great. And when you make something great in the world, okay, you now are able to have the power to do what you want with that said product or service or piece of art in the case of games. So another thing that Apple's been fighting against for the last couple of years is this thing where, you can only download apps from the Apple Store. And a lot of games company, like I think Epic's Games was a big one where they took Fortnite off the Apple's game store for exactly this reason. A lot of games companies and apps companies are in revolt that Apple aren't allowing their customers to download games officially outside of the Apple Store. Whereas I think that because Apple has made a ecosystem so great, I believe as a free market capitalist that they should be able to do what they want with how things are distributed on their service. And if customers were really that angry about this being a problem, then what they would simply do is stop buying the iPhone and move to an Android kind of phone where you're now allowed to do these things. But guess what? Most customers will never do that because they love what Apple has made. The ecosystem is so great that they will go through all these cons. Like, for example, I think it's £500 to repair the iPhone at the Apple Store officially, whereas I think you could do it for like £100, £150, but like a third party kind of dodgy guy down the road. But I am willing to take that kind of risk and stuff because Apple has made such a great ecosystem that they are able to use that leverage against me. And that's where I go back to the free market capitalism. If you're a company and you've made something great, it is not up for the government to tell you how to run your product or service, especially in a thing where it's non-essential. This isn't food, this isn't shelter, this isn't home, this isn't clothes, this isn't water, this isn't medicine. These are non-essential things.
According to Stop Killing Games, an increasing number of video games are sold effectively as goods, with no stated expiration date, but designed to be completely unplayable as soon as support from the publisher ends. So again, when you go to a store and you buy a copy of these games, they don't really tell you on the box, this is the day your access will die. If games did that, bro, let me tell you, they would not fucking sell.
That is so wrong. They would still sell. Because the average consumer just doesn't care. That's where he's so wrong. And again, I'm not discussing an ethical issue here. I'm saying that they should put how long the game should actually last. And they should be held accountable for that. But all I'm saying, in the final analysis, let's be honest, most consumers would be happy if the game lasts 3 years and they just don't care. Okay? They'll be upset about it, but in terms of actually still buying that product, if they like that game, they will still buy the game. It's the same thing with this Nintendo saga, okay? Nintendo games have now, for the Switch 2, they have now upped the price, like the RRP, from like £60 to like £80. When the Switch 2 first came out, the whole internet, with the whole Nintendo community, was up in roar about this. But I think about a month later now, where we are right now, no one really cares because they have now put up with it because guess what? There's only one Nintendo and they can do whatever the hell they want. And they can do that because you love the Switch 2 and the games on there so much that you will put up with it. And it's not for you to decide how much Nintendo should be able to sell their damn games for. If Nintendo wants to sell their games for £1 million each, even though that's crazy and absurd from a average person's point of view, They should be, and they are allowed to do that. It's their product. They can do what they want. Again, this isn't a need product. This is an ethical product. This is a game. People aren't relying on this to survive. People aren't relying on this on a game to eat. They can do what the hell they want with it. So for Mudahar to say that the game would stop selling is completely untrue. And the Switch 2 is selling, even though the Switch 2's games are, I think, £20 above the RRP of the Switch 1's, and the console's more expensive. Let me tell you something. The Switch 2 right now is selling like hotcakes, and it's extremely popular.
And second of all, it would be at least a clear indicator to the person buying that, I might as well spend my $60 somewhere else. I'm not a total dribbling idiot.
That will never happen. Look, GTA 6 is so hyped, and it will probably almost definitely be so much of a great game that if that game even came out for $200 and they said it would only last a year, I believe that 95% of people would still buy it, including me. By the way, guys, I haven't even got a games console right now. I will buy an Xbox Series X just for GTA 6 because I know it's going to be that good. So if you actually think that if GTA 6 comes out tomorrow for $200 a copy and it says it will only last a year and you think that will negatively impact sales, then you, my friend, know nothing about business. And by the way, Mudahar, I love your videos. I watch pretty much every single one of your videos. I'm a big fan. But I think on this specific topic, you are absolutely wrong.
Now, the reason why this initiative is so important is if you can make change happen in Europe, well, you can probably make change happen all over the world. It's one of the biggest markets out there. And if you can make change happen there, then developers who are thinking about sunsetting their games have to think about one of the biggest markets, and usually that'll just carry over across the entire world in theory.
That's where he's actually right, okay? We're now in a kind of era, probably since like 2005, 2010-ish. We're in an era now where in the West, we're giving up all of the values which made us successful to begin with. And the values that made us successful to begin with were free market, open capitalism. This is where the government just allows businesses to do what they want and get along with it, okay? As long as they're not breaking any fundamental laws. But now we're in this situation now where governments are now getting involved in businesses and we're almost turning into like a socialistic economy, okay? The majority of the West is still living in capitalism, but we're now having sprinkles of socialism. And this is where the downfall of the West is going to come along, okay? Because if you look at Rome, okay, it started off as this kind of free place, and then over time, Rome turned into this kind of like socialist environment. Over time, it fell. Because as a country becomes successful through capitalism and an open market and open business, what tends to happen is people start to get comfortable. And with that comfortableness, we start getting into these arbitrary laws like stop killing games, which now they're going to force companies to have this kind of end-of-life structure implemented from the get-go.
Now, one of the things that I personally kind of looked at when Thor released his videos back then was the idea of vague laws, right? But honestly, watching a further piece by Louis Rossmann, I realized why vagueness in this situation is actually not a bad thing. For instance, if we go to the ECI's page, one of the objectives you'll see over here is that the initiative does not seek to acquire ownership of said games, associated intellectual rights, or monetization rights. So in no way are we trying to get through the copyright wagon and trying to make games or any of this proprietary software that is developed in any way public information, right? Or just letting, or forcing companies rather to give up their intellectual properties or their proprietary systems rather. Neither does it expect the publisher to provide resources for the said video game once they discontinue it while leaving it in a reasonable functional playable state. So reasonably is the strong word. And when you look at it from the actual perspective of common sense, yeah, the idea is a reasonable functional state. Like imagine if, all of a sudden Halo Infinite was supposed to be at its end of life, right? Halo Infinite is a live service game to an extent. Now imagine at the end of its life, who's the company behind it? 343 Interactive or Microsoft. If at the end of its life they were like, all right, we're not going to service the multiplayer, we're not going to do whatever, but we'll cut the tether to the actual internet services and allow you to like maybe play a LAN match, do something split screen, play the single player, do some Forge stuff. We're not going to give you access to obviously matchmaking servers because they're not there anymore. We're also not going to give you leaderboards or things like that require a server to be active, right? So that's a reasonable experience. Similar to like The Crew, right? Like imagine if Ubisoft was like, all right.
Yeah, all of these things are reasonable, but that doesn't mean you can force reasonable onto a company. Okay, we've got to realize is whoever has the leverage in business wins. Simple as that, okay? And I know this because this problem about killing games has been going on for at least a decade now, probably more. And that has not stopped us from buying games, okay? We cannot force developers to make an end-of-life initiative. But I do not agree with their end game. And their end game is to force the companies to do it in a certain way which they want. You cannot do that, my friend. A lot of initiatives which the government had good intentions, a lot of times in this world, come out with terrible, terrible results. Having good intentions doesn't always guarantee you having a great result. So what we should do is allow companies to do what they want and then let the winner win by seeing how many sales they get. And the bad companies who act unethically and foolish will eventually die as long as they're not serving the consumer. But the thing is, they are still serving the consumer because guess what? We're still buying the games time and time and time again. A comment which I saw on YouTube on another Stop Killing Games initiative video, one of them said, well, I don't see what the problem is. All they have to do is just give us the game files at the end of the life of the game and let the public do what they want to do with it and call it in and it'll all be good. But that's so simplistic. That's so black and white. The problem with that is, say you're Ubisoft and you have a game, let's say Assassin's Creed, and then you give the game files away so people can do what they want with it, then what's going to happen is that could destroy your brand, because if they do craziness and stupidness, stuff that are bad, like sexually bad, just bad things. I don't want to say what the bad things are because I don't want to get banned on YouTube, but just doing bad, dirty things in those games, it could ruin your brand legacy and your brand. And big companies who've worked years to build their brand and have spent billions of pounds in marketing don't want to do that. But at the end of the day, what we've got to realize is whoever has the most leverage in business wins, okay? So my answer to the Stop Killing Games initiative and to solve the problem is, if you hate what games companies are doing with their games, you have only one ethical measure to use against them. Because as we've just discussed, we cannot use the government to enforce arbitrary laws and force them through basically jail to suit your own agenda. We cannot force that. Okay, if we want real ethical change, it has to be natural. And I think a lot of people are going to know what I'm going to say next. The only natural, ethical way to compete against these game companies is if you hate how they're comporting themselves and how they're behaving and how they run their companies, you only have one option of what you have to do. Guess what that is, guys? Every company out there is started to make a profit and make money. So that's not bad, okay? Businesses are there to make money, okay? And if you don't want to make money, you can start up a CIC or a charity, okay, if you're not into money. But guess what? Even those charities and stuff, a lot of their leaders are about the money too, okay? But guess what? That only one option you have to do to fight against companies so you can show them and tell them that you hate what they're doing so they can change. One option, guys. One option. Stop buying their damn games. But guess what? You're still gonna buy the damn game anyway. Checkmate. The companies have checkmated you. And not because they're just evil and they want to use power against you. Because no, they can checkmate you because they are building things that are great and they are building things that you want to buy. So if you want to buy it, their rules, their way. This is the Hedge Springer Show.